I think all of us like a touch of elegance in our lives now and then. I certainly do. I am, of course, talking about inviting a few friends for dinner and serving wines with every course. It's so easy and everyone enjoys it so much. You know, we Americans are basically a very friendly, informal people, and somehow we feel embarrassed about doing things in a formal, magnificent way, and we shouldn't. First of all, a formal dinner party for 6 or 8 people is fun, because graciousness is always pleasant and formality provides a refreshing break from everyday existence. It is much the same feeling as dressing up in brand new clothes. Secondly, the time and thought given to preparations for a formal dinner is a compliment to your guests. The foods, the wines, the service are all part of gracious entertaining. Let's pretend we are preparing a dinner, as I am, for some friends next week. It is entirely optional whether you wish to use a set of different wine glasses for the different wines or the all-purpose wine glass. The first course is soup. I shall use a consommé, although onion or asparagus soup is commendable too. With soup, serve your guests a glass of dry California sherry, approximately 2 ounces. The second course is a seafood dish, such as oysters on the half-shell or cold lobster with mayonnaise. With this, a chilled California dry white, a Riesling, in 4-ounce pourings. The entree is next, a nice rack of lamb, a roast duck, or even prime rib with fresh asparagus, or French cut beans with chestnuts or walnuts, and perhaps a potato soufflé. With this, of course, a robust California red wine, such as a Burgundy, or a fruity Cabernet Sauvignon or Gamay Beaujolais, would be most delightful, complementing the meat and offering a contrast to the other wines. The red wine should also be served in 4-ounce pourings. At this juncture, a simple lettuce, cucumber, and onion salad is most refreshing, with an oil and vinegar dressing. If you wish, you can break up Roquefort cheese and toss with the lettuce and dressing. Now, dessert should be equally simple. Fresh fruit, a mild cheese such as Monterey Jack, and of course, a very highly chilled California sweet sauterne. When dessert is completed, it is time to serve the demi-tasse coffee, and not before. With the coffee, the final touch of elegance is achieved by offering your guests a glass of fruity port, the smaller 2-ounce portion. There is no doubt we have just prepared for an elegant dinner, but you know that just one of those California wines, or champagne, can turn the most simple family meal into a feast, and it could be served with every course at your banquet. A white wine with a chicken dinner, red wine with spaghetti, can go a long way in making your evening meal a banquet for family or friends. And don't let anyone fool you. California wines, even at their low cost compared to most foreign wines, are among the finest in the world. You just can't surpass them. In addition to enhancing your meal, you might also consider that wine is the greatest tranquilizer in the world and helps you to relax. And dinner is the time to relax after a day's work. That is one reason I enjoy wine with my dinner nightly. And if you are on a diet, well, believe me, a glass of wine can make any dietary regimen appealing. Whether you look at wine as a flavorful treat or as a good beverage that is automatically served with dinner, just remember California wines have an elegance of their own that enhances any meal. It is a wonderful way of life. Have you ever stopped to think that all those wonderful California wines have distinctive and different personalities, just as people? And why shouldn't they? Wines are living things, changing subtly, maturing with each day that passes. The other night, I was suddenly aware that within one group of wines, such as white table wines, There are many choices and a wide variety of personal preferences, all of which complement and are appropriate for seafoods, fowl, salads, and other dishes. For instance, in the white table wines, there are three main types: Sauterne, Rhine, and Chablis. And in each category, there are several wines made from different types of grapes, each with individual personalities and characteristics. Under the classification of Sauterne are the delightful California wines such as Semillon or Sauvignon Blanc, named for the variety of grapes from which they are made. Sauterne is golden-hued, full-bodied, fragrant, with various types ranging in taste from dry to sweet. Although the Sauvignon Blanc wines are usually quite dry, there is, of course, the Haute or Chateau Sauterne, which is quite sweet and is frequently served as a dessert wine. Under the classification of Rhines are such wonderful California wines as Riesling, Traminer, Sylvaner, and even among the Rieslings there are Johannisberger and Grey Riesling, labeled with the names of the grapes from which they are made. In general, the Rhine-type wines are thoroughly dry, tart, and have a flowery bouquet, are light-bodied, and are pale or green-gold in color. Then, of course, there are the grand California Chablis types such as Pinot Blanc, Pinot Chardonnay, White Pinot, and Chenin Blanc. These names are for the variety of grapes which go into the wine. The Chablis-type wines overall are dry but not as tart as the Rhines and are more full-bodied. That is, they feel heavier in the mouth. The Pinots are particularly smooth and delicately flavored. The descriptions of the wines as sweet or dry are really quite general. However, each winery has its own ideas and methods of bringing out the best of the juice of the grape. You'll find much enjoyment tasting the various wines produced by the different California wine growers and then deciding the ones which suit you best. And the correct wines to drink are the ones you like best. The same applies to red table wines, rosés, and all the many other California wines, the champagnes, sherries, ports, and so forth. And as an added note of good cheer, my doctor tells me that a glass of wine with dinner is also a wonderful way to relax after a long day. So wine's not only good, but good for you, to your health and pleasure. I must plead guilty to an overactive sense for the dramatic at times, and a bottle of deep ruby red port has fired my imagination. If any wine had a drama in it, it certainly is the noble, rich port. Indeed, I've noticed in my travels around the world in the great restaurants and fine homes, it would be unthinkable not to offer a glass of port with dessert or after coffee, and more in this country I see this being done. California ports are among the finest in the world, developed from the rich, flavorful grapes which thrive so abundantly in the fertile California soil, nourished by the warm California sun. The tradition of excellent California ports dates as far back as around 1850 and the gold rush era in California, less than 150 years after port wines were first developed and introduced to the world in Portugal. The history of port wines themselves is tied up with war and politics, trade, and a search to please the Englishman's taste. Port, to me, is one of the really excellent beverages to serve with dessert, over ice cream, with or on fresh fruits, or to enjoy with coffee. It is also favored by many as an excellent before-dinner aperitif and afternoon refreshment, and merely superb with walnuts. And for those warm, leisurely afternoons, try port in a tall glass with soda and a slice of lemon or lime. Most California ports are of a deep, rich ruby red, although many tawny ports are also produced. A secret of port is in the blending, and I cannot think of any other wine in which so much care is taken. Port wines, like others, are naturally fermented. Then, at just the right moment and at the right sweetness, brandy is added. The brandy stops the fermentation while there is still some grape sugar left. After that, the port wines are usually blended, for one wine may be delicate while another may be robust, with more authoritative flavor and aroma. The careful blending process gives us the balanced port. The port is then allowed to age. The father of port was a rather rough table wine produced in the Douro River Valley, which the ancient Romans used to import from what was known as Lusitania. The wines were shipped down the Douro River to the seaport on the Atlantic, known now as Oporto. However, it was not until the beginning of the 18th century that the true port wines came into existence as an indirect result of the renewal of the wars between England and France. With the armies of English Queen Anne once again engaged with the French, the English also wished to cut off the French wine trade as much as possible as well. This obviously was to hurt the French in the pocketbook, but the English also needed to assure themselves of a new source of wines. Unfortunately for the English shippers of Portuguese wines in Oporto, the rather harsh table wines did not appeal to their countrymen, despite the low cost. Somewhere between 1703 and 1710, the shippers in Oporto began experimenting with different blends of Douro wines. At last they came up with the answer. They blended grape brandy, grape spirits, to the fermenting wine at just the right moment, and the result was the king of wines, port. A delightful, rich, fruity, sweet wine, port rapidly became the favorite wine of the English and was drunk as a refreshment in the afternoon, before dinner and after meals, and in the 18th century it was not uncommon for some Englishmen to drink their port with meals. Dr. Samuel Johnson, England's 18th century man of letters and of good living, once observed, "Claret is for boys, port is for men, and to that we add, it is also for women, and all who enjoy graciousness and zest in living." How do you like your red table wines? Tart, mellow, robust, or subtle? At room temperature or slightly chilled? I personally enjoy my California red table wines all of these ways. It just depends upon my mood at the moment. Basically, there are 5 main types of red wines: Burgundy, Claret, Rosé, Vino Rosso, and Chianti. And each type has its own individual characteristics. What is interesting is that wines are so different from any other beverages, being directly a product of the earth, a beverage of moderation, and actually enhancing the flavor and appreciation of food instead of detracting from it. In a phrase, wines are exciting. The California Burgundies, for instance, are traditionally dry, robust, and full-bodied, and deeper in color than the Claret. Under the Burgundy classification are wines such as Pinot Noir, Gamay, Barbera, and Red Pinot, named for the different types of grapes from which the wines are made. The Pinot Noir is probably the best known and is especially soft and velvety and has a superb bouquet. Also, don't be surprised if your Gamay is a little lighter in body and color. It is often the case, but ranks among the great wines from California. The Barbera wines, like their name implies, are made from the Barbera grapes of California and have an enchanting primitive quality and spirit. Claret is another type of red table wine, although the word claret as designating a type of wine is less commonly used than the word Burgundy. In California, these wines are often known by the names of the grapes used to make them. Cabernet Sauvignon and Zinfandel are the California clarets. Generally tart, dry, and zestful, these wines are usually light to medium-bodied and ruby red in color. Zinfandel is exclusively a California wine and is fresh and fruity. This brings us right into those delightful rosé-type California wines which have the gay pink color. These refreshing wines, served chilled, are light-bodied and range in taste from dry to slightly sweet. The rosés are among the most versatile of wines, for they appeal almost equally with any dish. Another type of California red wine is the Vino Rosso, which can be described as mellow, slightly sweet, and soft in flavor, and quite full in body. These wines often have Italian-sounding names. Still another red wine is California Chianti, a wine with a truly Italian flavor, dry, slightly tart, full-bodied, and delightfully robust. It may seem here as if I have thrown out a lot of names, but don't let that bother you. Just try the different types of red wines with your meals, and note the wines you like best. Those will be the only names you need to remember, and you will really have fun experimenting. All of these different types of wonderful California wines go well with meats, game and game birds, and cheese and spaghetti dishes, but you can enjoy them with any dish that pleases you. Also, I mentioned earlier that red wines can be served at room temperature or slightly chilled. Most often, I drink my red slightly chilled, as the European concept of room temperature is slightly cooler than what we Americans enjoy. However, thoroughly chill your rosés. One last thought, if I may. Our California wines are universally among the finest in the world, and you will find their great variety easily available, far less expensive than foreign wines, and generally better. Don't forget, wine can make the simplest meal a banquet, and make a banquet for friends a very memorable occasion indeed. I've always held the belief that a host is never measured by the expensiveness of his table, but rather by the flavorful dishes he serves. And this is certainly true of the beverages also offered. This new emphasis in the United States upon flavor is perhaps why so many party givers today serve a variety of cocktail and dessert wines to their guests. I certainly do, and particularly if I have prepared a delicately seasoned dinner to follow. I might add that in the finest homes around the world, outstanding gourmets and connoisseurs frame their entire dinners around sherry and port, serving sherry before dinner and port after dinner. To these people, it would be unthinkable not to serve sherry before the meal. For instance, if you were having a few friends in for refreshment in the afternoon or early evening, you will find a variety of outstanding California sherries of varying sweetness that will please your guests. A very pale, dry cocktail sherry with a sharp cheese for hors d'oeuvres makes a delightful prelude to the meal. As a variation, also offer dry and sweet vermouth, particularly those of California. They are gaining new popularity when served before meals, cold and straight or on the rocks. It is no trouble whatsoever to cater to the taste of those guests who really like a heavier sweet beverage by offering California cream sherry or port. There are a number of advantages to serving cocktail and dessert wines to guests. First, you do not have to leave your guests most of the time to mix cocktails and refill glasses. Secondly, you preserve the palates of your guests and of yourself for the meal that is soon to follow. Thirdly, your guests will enjoy the wines and may even wish to sample all of the wines being offered. And fourthly, you'll find the cost of a bottle of dry, medium, or sweet sherry or port is so reasonable. All of these reasons are very important to me, for I do insist on enjoying the company of my guests and in pleasing them. As you know, I do a great deal of cooking, and if I have taken the pains to prepare a special dish, I do want my guests to taste it. The patio party is another idea we should consider next. Being Californians, patio and garden parties are pretty important at the Vincent Price home. When I get away from the studio in the early afternoon, or when on rare weekends I am free, I find it very easy to sit on a lawn chaise in the sun and sip dry sherry and soda over ice with a slice of lemon. Or, if in the mood for something a little sweeter, port over ice with soda and lemon. And this is what I offer my guests. Such drinks are not only cooling and refreshing, but they offer flavor. I can also recommend those excellent California port wines with desserts and with your after-dinner coffee. They fulfill that need for something slightly sweet while at the same time helping you relax. I know a number of friends in the picture business who feel as I do and who have discovered California wines as a delightful aid to relaxation. Quite a few doctors in Beverly Hills, where I live, suggest it. You probably have noticed that I keep referring to California wines. Well, this is because I feel very strongly that California wines are among the finest in the world and better than most, and these wines are easily available. And when it comes to wines, I speak from experience, for wine is part of daily living at the Price home. I recommend the best way for you to find out which wines you prefer is to try as many as possible and serve as many as possible. It is a wonderful game which you always win.